Friday afternoon, June 15, 2012, at approximately 4:57 p.m., Ozark Police responded to Brandy Lane regarding a possible domestic violence call. Upon arrival of the initial responding officer, he encountered a white male who was located in the middle of the street and was armed with a machete. The suspect was given verbal commands by the officer to disarm, which was met with non-compliance by the suspect. The suspect began moving in an aggressive manner towards the officer, who was continually giving commands for the suspect to stop and disarm. Again, the suspect failed to comply with the officer's demands. As the suspect continued toward the officer fired 2 shots from his service weapon, striking the suspect twice in the chest area. The officer began immediate life-saving measures awaiting the arrival of medical personnel. The suspect was transported to Dale Medical Center by Ozark Ambulance Service, where he later died as a result of his injuries. No one else was injured during the call. The suspect is identified as Joseph Dewey Overstreet, age 42, of Ozark. Prior to the arrival of law enforcement, the suspect had made threats directed toward his family, had damaged property of the residence with a machete to include the outside of a mobile home, and had poured gasoline inside of a shed that was located on the property. Threats were also made of burning down the residence. I contacted the Alabama Bureau of Investigation to respond to the scene to assume the investigation, which is standard practice in any officer involved shooting. The officer has been placed on administrative leave pending the completion of the ABI investigation. The investigation is currently ongoing, but after a review of the officer's in-car video footage and witness statements, it appears that the officer did in fact operate. Scratch that part. The investigation is currently ongoing, but after a review of the officer's in-car video footage and witness statements, it appears that the officer did act within all operating policies and procedures of this agency. Okay, now then I'll answer your questions.
What status is the police officer now?
He's on administrative leave, and he'll be on administrative leave pending the completion of the ABI investigation.
Other than the emotional aspect on the police officer, was he physically injured?
He was not. The officer was not injured. He seems to be doing as well as can be expected, in the circumstances.
Was there anyone else in the home?
At the time of the shooting, the wife, the suspect's wife, was.
Was she injured at all? You said it was a domestic call.
No, she was not injured.
Okay.
Does Mr. Overstreet have a history as far as problems with law enforcement, or?
Yes, he has a history with law enforcement, especially a history with our agency. While I don't have his history with me, I do know at least a couple of occasions where he has assaulted police officers in the past.
Any idea if he's been charged with that?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
But I don't have the disposition of that, so I'm
sure. Do you have any idea, this was a domestic call, do you know if police were called out to this home on domestic calls prior to this incident? Like, is there a history of domestic stuff here? Maybe, police were called there last week or something? Or?
I don't have that.
Okay. You said preliminarily that he's been, would you say, I guess what I was trying to get is a clarification. You said he acted, your review or your department's review has shown that he acted within all policies?
From what we have gathered, that is from a review of his in-car camera footage, as well as gathered witness statements at the scene. It does appear that he acted within the policies and the guidelines of the department regarding the discharge of his firearm. He did continually, as he exited his vehicle, the suspect began approaching him. It was very obvious it was an aggressive manner. The police officer was continually giving commands for the suspect to stop, for him to drop the weapon, and of course the suspect continued to come toward the officer, and that's when the officer fired the weapon. And understand, while I'm saying this may sound like this occurred you know, over a short period of time. It evolved very, very rapidly. So, I mean, this entire episode was, I'd say, less than 30 seconds.
Oh, right, that quick.
Who called in that there was a problem?
The wife.
Wife?
The wife. And at the time that she called in, he had made threats of directed toward the family, toward her, toward the children. And as units were responding, the dispatchers could actually hear Mr. Overstreet in the background damaging the home. He was taking a machete, basically puncturing the side of the mobile home. On her vehicle, he took the machete. He punctured all 4 of the tires on the vehicle, and he had already, like I said, poured gasoline inside of an outside shed. It threatened to burn down the home. And of course, a lot of this was captured over the telephone by the E911 communications center. So and of course, all of that information is recorded as well.
Do they suspect any alcohol or drug abuse?
At this point, drugs, I don't know. Alcohol would definitely be a factor, yes.
Do you, at the time of the incident, were there other law enforcement on the scene, or was this officer like the first and only
The
officer?
officer was the first. Of course, it's our policy when any domestic call is dispatched, you send the initial officer as well as a backup officer. The backup officer was probably a couple of blocks away when he encountered Mr. Overstreet.
Okay.
So the initial officer was the only officer that was present when the incident happened.
Okay. So like the backup officer and other officers had not arrived yet when the shooting occurred?
That's correct.